Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love. The COVID-19 pandemic has irrevocably shaped how connections are formed in congregations across the United States and the world. The Church of the Larger Fellowship is committed to being a resource within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine Quest to our online community hub and our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison. The CLF supports the ministries of those who hold target identities: Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism; Trust, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together; and Drum, Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, just to name a few. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed, even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Greetings, beloved. Welcome to episode 414 here in season 10 of the Voices of Unitarian Universalism, also known as the VUU, or if you are our beloved Kiana Dene Perkins, the VUU. We are so happy to be here with you today. It is just some hosts here today. Aisha has let us play unsupervised, and DC and I are coming to you, and we're going to be talking about something interesting for the next however many minutes that we are talking.
Yeah.
So greetings all. I am the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, 1/3 of the lead ministry team of your Church of the Larger Fellowship, the Unitarian Universalist congregation without borders or walls that has sponsored the VUU for the last 10 years. I am joining you from Peekskill, New York, the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger nations in the Hudson Valley north of New York City. And it is a dreary, cold, rainy winter day. It is raining, and so all of the beautiful snow that has coated everything is melting and going away, which is a blessing and a curse both, because it is revealing all of the crap that was under all of the beautiful snow. But it is lovely to be here with you. DC Fortune, how are you?
I am well. I mean, I am off this week, so I don't exactly know what day it is.
Thursday.
So, yeah, it's Thursday because I'm here. I recognize that, but only because I got a text from you saying, "Don't forget." I was like, "Oh, right, today. Yeah, that's today. Yes." So I am coming to you here from central Pennsylvania, the land of the Susquehannock people. on the banks of, I am on the bank of Penns Creek because everything in Pennsylvania is named for the colonizers. But the ancestral home of the Susquehannock, and it's like you. It's like gray and rainy and gross. It's like not warm enough to go out and do anything. Like I can handle like damp if it's at least tolerable temperature wise, but it's not. It's just sort of raw and unpleasant. Blech. So, oh well. I have comfort food. I have my mac and cheese. If you see me eating, that's what that's about. And I'm glad to be here. Chris, how are you doing up there or down? You're in Virginia, aren't you?
I'm in Virginia. Hi, everyone. Christina Rivera, she, her pronouns. And you all are always welcome to call me Chris. And yeah, it's the weather here is just bleh. Which is kind of how I feel. It's just rainy, gray, just yeah. All the pretty snow is melted away. DC made me giggle because DC said that the weather there was like Michael. And I think DC meant the weather there is like Michael's weather.
Right. That's not what I said. Oops.
Right. I'm dreary and gray sometimes. Not often cold. Dreary and gray often. Yeah.
But it did make
the
me
S
giggle.
was silent. The S
Yeah,
was silent.
it really made me giggle, so I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'm just looking at my window, and the stink bugs are a perennial.
Yeah, what's with that?
In our area, and because we live on a farm, they just love our house, and it makes me so mad because like the temperatures get a little bit warmer and they're just like, it's time to come out, and we're like, no, it's still winter. We at least get one season off from you, but the winters aren't getting cold enough to kill off their cycle. So it's just wow.
Yeah, my cats will kill and catch and kill just about anything in this house except those damn things.
Yeah, they're awful.
Your
terrible.
The cats know better than
the cats know better. Well, one of the few things they know better about, but yeah.
Yeah. My son was several years ago when they hit Virginia, and for 2 years it was just awful. We were just inundated. There wasn't anything anybody could do but wait it out, and we were having dinner, and one flew into my son's mashed potatoes while he was looking away, and he took a big bite of mashed potatoes.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was the worst. The worst. I don't know if he ate for several days after that. It was just.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
Yep.
Oh. So speaking of inundations of insects that you can eat,
cicadas are coming.
Right, those of us who live on the east coast of the United States, especially the Northeast and like the eastern part of the Midwest, are preparing for a once every 200 and something year convergence of the biggest 17-year cicada brood and the biggest 13-year cicada brood hatching and emerging simultaneously.
Oh my God!
Which I'm frankly just looking forward to, because I think cicadas are fantastic. Like the noise does not bother me. They make a lot of noise.
Oh my God!
The noise does not bother me, but I just
creepy little ectoskeletons.
And apparently they taste good too.
Dude,
I have heard that.
Especially if you get them right after they've molted, so that they're not so crunchy. I've heard that they taste good. So
wow.
If anyone out there in VUU land has experience eating cicadas, let us know. I don't. I have heard that they taste good.
I always sort of wonder what early folks, like the first people to have heard these things, like what they like. Oh, this is the time of the years when the trees scream. Like I where I am, it sounds like there are car alarms up in the tree.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, people are like, oh, the lovely sound. No, this is not lovely. This is. We have very different opinions about what lovely summer sounds like, and that ain't it. Mm-mm.
Yep.
I worked
Can't
one
hear myself
summer
think.
in an entomology lab in college, and I was
Saying
studying.
so much about you.
Yeah, I was studying Lyme disease spreading ticks, which
Okay.
are
Sure.
unbelievably gross
Yeah.
and incontrovertibly awful little creatures. But one of the entomologists that I worked with had a cicada keychain. Um, it was a little plastic cicada, but when you pressed it, it made cicada noise, and so
Oh
she
my
would just
God.
go around. She'd like sneak up behind people, and so I just got used to it. Jakaran Olaoya, CLF Learning Fellow, is joining us in the chat and says absolutely not.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Williams, our broadcast producer, who is behind the chalice, reports that they had a cricket lollipop once. I have eaten crickets, and I have eaten ants. I've eaten roasted crickets, which taste kind of like popcorn.
Yeah, I like roasted crickets actually.
So, like, if cicadas taste like that, just bigger.
Yeah,
You do that and let me know, Michael.
it's just a lot of work for a little amount of protein.
Well, it's not such a lot of amount of work if there are 7 billion of them.
That's true.
Right? Like, you can just pluck them off the tree like fruit.
Yeah, that is true.
No, not okay.
So that's what we're preparing for here in the eastern part of the United States, is a great cicada spring. What's going on in the Unitarian Universalist world these days? We have some hiring news.
Yes.
Faith development.
Say it. Do it.
Yeah.
So the UUA has announced that we knew that Dr. Janice Marie Johnson was going to be the sole director of ministries and faith development, and we're excited that that is formally so now that they have hired a deputy director for her. And so the Reverend Dr. Cecilia Kingman, who some of you know from this year's Berry Street lecture, is going to be the new deputy director of ministries and faith development, and is going to be the person closely working with the religious education credentialing program, all the professional credentialing programs, including the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, which DC and I both serve on. So we get to work closely with Cecilia, and I'm very excited. And we're gonna reach out to Cecilia and invite her to be on a future VUU.
Yeah.
Probably Murray also.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
What else is happening in the UU world? We're gearing up for online virtual General Assembly.
Didn't the request for proposals or whatever you call it come out?
I
There
guess.
was a request like if you have an idea for a program, submit your thing now. Right? That came out just because somebody asked me to be part of their program. So
yeah, and you know, one of the topics I'd love to talk about, maybe not today, but maybe we can get some of the folks from Transition Office on, is the path of interim ministry, and kind of what are the qualifications around interim ministry? What are the understood role of interim ministry, and the ways in which interim ministry has been very successful in the past, but also the ways in which it has created deep mistrust within congregational staff groups. And the reason I bring it up is we were having a conversation in a religious professional forum a couple of days ago. And it just really highlighted the ways in which interim ministry can be beautiful, but also the ways in which it has done a lot of harm. And I think that would be a valuable thing to shed some light on.
Mm-hmm.
What an interesting.
I also think it's interesting that in UU land, interim ministry is sometimes used as the functional equivalent of a parish up on the Canadian border, which is
Not
how
that there's anything wrong with the Canadian border.
which is what happened to misbehaving priests in
Mm.
the New England diocese. Like you get a minister who gets a negotiated resignation or negotiated departure, and they take the minister who may or may not be misbehaving, but is certainly traumatized by that thing, and then told, well, why don't you do interim for a couple of years before you get another parish? Right? And so they go to a ministry that requires interim work, and frankly, the minister needs interim work too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that, I'm as a religious educator, I took the interim ministry training for religious professionals, not the one specific for, ordained fellowship ministers, but there are a couple of different interim ministries. And so there's a couple of different trainings. And to me, it was super helpful and very clear as to what the role and responsibility is in interim ministry. And having been with interim ministers, both as colleagues and as, having had them in congregations where I was serving, some of those followed those expectations really closely, and some of them were wildly different and wildly inappropriate in what their understanding of interim ministry, and even articulated. I've heard experienced interim ministers come in and say, my role is to clear out salary cap so that you have salary for your next called minister. And I'm like, I'm sure that's not your role.
No worse than the worst things that I've heard said, which is my role is to get them to dislike me so much that they like the next person. I'm like, no, also not your role.
Not your role at all. Or my role is to, basically re-interview all of the staff to, make sure that there isn't anyone here that should be fired before the new called minister arrives, so that they don't have to deal with that. And the ways in which that unwritten expectation has played out, and the fears that congregational staff have when an interim minister comes, because that's how things have played out, is real. And so it would be great to really have a deeper conversation about that.
Well, and on the flip side of that, there are a lot of truly skilled and really wonderful interim ministers who are holding right now an unbelievable amount of congregational anxiety. Like, I am not trained for this amount of congregational anxiety, even though they are truly skilled and unbelievably caring folks. And I know some folks who are like, they're nearing the end of interims and the anxiety is ramping up beyond anything they've ever experienced in ministry, because there's a lot of anxiety in church systems and congregational systems right now, as it is, over the future of congregations and the funding of congregations. But there's also a shortage of ministers, in part because people are not offering living wages. There's a shortage of religious professionals because of the lack of living wages available, and congregations are scared. They're like, you're leaving us. You're the interim, and you're leaving us, and we're scared we're not going to have anyone.
Right.
And so they act out. Scared, anxious people act out in unpredictable ways.
Yeah.
So true. So
Scared
true.
and surprised people rarely respond well.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I'm
we're not
taking
talking about that.
I am taking notes on potential topics for
Yes.
future VUU shows,
Mhm.
and I'd love to know from our VUU viewers, whether you're live or watching this or hearing it on our podcast, what are shows you would really love us to think about having? Are there guests that you would love for us to try and invite on our show? You can pop that right in the chat. You can put it in the YouTube chat if you're watching it later, or you can probably email it to us, right? Probably to clf@clfuu.org. Darby is here live. So Darby and Jakara are live. We're excited. If there's anyone here from Arizona here live and you want to tell us about how freezing you are because it's only 75 degrees there, please feel free.
Bite me.
But if you have suggestions, we would love to hear that, because while we try very hard to book guests and have upcoming folks,
we've got a good one coming up.
Yeah, we have a bunch of good ones coming up, but there are always more.
Yes.
And,
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So, also, other in UU Roundup world, the search process grinds on. Let us hold in prayer all of those congregations that are searching for a new match for a minister, and ministers who are searching for a new congregation. That is an anxiety-filled process, no matter how you slice it. And just because any change has anxiety, good, bad, or indifferent, there's always anxiety. So sending thoughts and prayers and all that stuff out to the folks on all sides of that. Yeah. And not for love or money would I be in the UUA settlement office right now. Good Lord. Like, I can't even. Yeah. So, all right. So we were going to think about, Michael was going to opine eloquently about theatrical culture and movie stuff and Barbie and things that I know nothing about other than I see the headlines fly by.
Listen, I haven't been to a movie theater to watch a movie in like 12 years. So I'm not the person to opine about what movies are the best or what people did the best, but I can watch culture and note when misogyny and racism are at play in our wider culture, and I can encourage folks to hold multiple truths at once and complexity. So this week the Oscar nominations came out, and a lot of people reacted because Greta Gerwig, who directed Barbie, was not nominated for directing. She was nominated for Best Picture and for Best Adapted Screenplay, so her writing was nominated. And Margot Robbie, who played Barbie, was not nominated. And in making note of that, they seized on the fact that Ryan Gosling, who played Ken, was nominated, and forgot about the fact that America Ferrera, whose character name I don't even know, but who everyone I know who's seen the movie says had the standout scene of the entire film, was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And so I saw a lot of people posting, these really soundbite kind of things that reduced everything to Barbie didn't get nominated, but Ken did, and thus like there's patriarchy. And
but it sounds like Skipper made it.
Well, in boiling it down like that, you make the Latina woman who was nominated invisible, right? So you're perpetuating racism in boiling it down to something that makes a nice meme, right? And yes, Jennifer Troy Papp also notes that both Billie Eilish and Ryan Gosling were nominated for Best Original Song for their songs in the movie. And so I think it's really important when we talk about these things to note that like misogyny exists and racism also exists. And we can celebrate the fact that some amazing actors and actresses of color got historic nominations this year. So Lily Gladstone became the first Native North American woman ever nominated for Best Actress this year. And Coleman Domingo became the second queer person playing a queer role to be nominated for an Oscar for their role. Right. So,
and what year is it? 2000 what?
Right. And the first was Ian McKellen in Gods and Monsters, right? So like that, like
It's a while.
It's been a while, but only the
It's
second.
been a while.
You know, the Oscars like to give Oscars to straight folks playing queer roles, right?
And able-bodied people playing disabled roles.
Thank you, and skinny people in fat suits and all sorts of things like that. So it's like we can celebrate the fact that like a gay man of color was nominated for playing a role of a queer person in the movie. And that doesn't mean there's not homophobia and heterosexism. That doesn't mean that like the whole system of binary gender actors and actresses does not leave out non-binary actors and actresses who either have to choose a category that doesn't fit them or just not be nominated at all, right? Like, but still, Lucretia writes, I'm also not interested in firsts anymore. And yet the firsts keep happening, and the firsts have to happen before they're
well, and I think, you know, for America, you know, for our, it's not even, you know, for me, it wasn't even about, you know, first or seconds or third, you know, or all of those things. For me, it was the utter erasure.
Yeah.
Like it was just not even part of the conversation at all.
Because
you know, the meme that was going around was, you know, Ryan got it, Greta didn't, Robbie didn't. You know, this is the patriarchy all over again, and it was quintessential white feminism. And you know, Aisha posted, you know, that were we really surprised that, you know, a $1 billion movie, you know, about ending the patriarchy didn't end the patriarchy. No, and you know, that was exactly it. It was like, is this any shock? And then in the shock that was there, it was clear that it was about these white women that weren't recognized without having any mention of the Latina woman that was. And that is the erasure of the Latinx contribution to our country is a real thing. And it was just, yeah, I was seeing this over and over again on my social media feed, and I'm like, Jesus, I didn't even see the movie. I don't care. There's a full-grown genocide going on right now, and I could care less about this, and I care about it because this is what this woman is called to do, you know, in her profession. And she has reached a high level of excellence in her profession. You know, the highest level that for which you can be, you know, publicly recognized, which isn't to say that there aren't other folks that are tremendously talented. And there was nothing about it. It was all a commentary on these two white women that weren't. Not saying they didn't deserve it, not saying they weren't talented. It was just peak white feminism, and it was extraordinarily disappointing. It was, I mean, I shouldn't have been surprised, but you know, it's just like, well, you know, you kind of hope, and then hope is dashed. So,
and I'm gonna say, like, one of the things that didn't, maybe it's a more fruitful conversation to have. Even one of the things that surprised me was that I saw a lot of my friends who were women of color, especially Latina women, using their emotional labor to say, please don't erase America forever, right? Including you, Chris, right? So,
yeah.
including you.
And I'm fucking exhausted, people. Like, I am so tired and still, like, I'm like, all right, we got to post.
But by no means limited to you, right?
Yeah,
So,
no.
a lot of folks. And so, as the day wore on, I noticed those people were spending less and less time on Facebook, probably because it was just fucking exhausting to keep saying the same thing over and over again. So I started posting that comment on folks, and I started posting like, too many women of color have noted that this makes America forever invisible for me not to post that comment here, right? Like, I tried to like amplify the voices of the people who were most directly affected by this and who had spent their emotional labor on this. And I got pushback for being a masculine of center voice, criticizing white women being upset about these nominations. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm sorry that this feedback is coming from me. Like, you
don't be a dick, and people won't call you a dick.
If you say it's coming from a man, but like, I'm sorry that this feedback is coming from me, and I'm trying really hard to amplify the voices of people who are utterly exhausted by having to repeat themselves again and again. And like, maybe if you paid attention to those voices, I wouldn't have to do that.
Just saying.
And I left out that last part. It was maybe implied. And you know, the Facebook algorithms, to be honest, are designed for the meme sound bites. So people were seeing the meme sound bites that made them upset. And I had a number of people like say, boy, I didn't actually know anything about the Oscars and don't really pay attention to these things, but this meme made me so upset that I reposted it, and you've made me look into it, and I'm sorry. Like, good, okay, we grow, we learn, we grow, right? So there were a number of people who said things like that too. Jakarin says, I hate the way people weaponize victimization. How different would things be if people just sat with the analysis? That's a really good question.
You can just sit and think. You don't have to reply right away. it's okay. That's what I do when I find something that I'm like, ooh, boy, did I do that? I might have done that. Maybe, okay. I don't know.
And I did say to people, I'm sorry that you're reading this attached to this face, and like I'm not attached to the faces of the people whose voices I'm amplifying. But can I try and be clear that I didn't start posting this until
Right. You
enough,
didn't just like wake up
enough
in
of
the
my
morning.
friends. It was clear that enough of my friends were just exhausted of repeating themselves that someone had to step in.
Right.
Yeah, exactly it.
And as it said, if you're not close enough to get hit with the same stones being thrown at the person being marginalized, you can't really call yourself an ally.
Yeah. Well, and I think, everything's a balance, right? It's all,
Oh my God.
yeah, it doesn't, Karen said, it doesn't have to be directly connected to shame. It's not a personal attack. We're just saying this is the system at work, right? This is the system as it was designed, supporting and amplifying the people that it was designed to support and amplify.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't say, hey, this is, and I mean, and the Oscars are like part of that system, like, within our capitalistic culture, absolutely. But if we don't have just a little bit of self-analysis to say, okay, if this is the system at work, we need to say that, because otherwise it just continues on. That train just continues down that track, and it's really hard to divert it if we're not, saying, because, people are like, well, duh, of course that's how it played out. Yeah. And again,
an object at rest will stay at rest until kicked in the ass by something else.
Exactly. And it's just all we're saying. I shouldn't say all we're saying. All I'm saying is it's exhausting being that voice all the time. And we need other folks who have privilege to be that voice, and to do that analysis before we have to do it. That would be lovely. So.
Wouldn't it though?
It just really would. Yeah, so folks, still a genocide going on in Gaza and Palestine. So please be aware that has not gone away, and that we still need to be paying attention to that. I know that there is, trauma fatigue out there. I know that people are exhausted, depending on your proximity to this. I know that the folks closest in proximity are completely exhausted and fried. And so we need folks, who are further away from that proximity, who still give a shit that genocide is happening. We need y'all to, collect your people and be talking about this. Because there's only so much of that you can, that we can carry, that folks, as you get it's like the grief spiral, right? Like what goes in or what comes out. This is a moment to look at that and see where you're at on that spiral, and see if it's your turn to move and to be collecting your folks.
Yeah. We've got a little reminder here that the International Courts of Justice is expected to rule on Friday on charges of genocide that were brought by South Africa and supported by Ireland, which my Irish heritage is very proud for that. Because, the Irish have sort of opinions about being colonized over through the years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens out of that. If that sort of thing coming out of The Hague will make a difference in the United States. I don't know I don't know that it will or won't. But Aisha and I had a really great conversation about that last week, when we were left unsupervised. Haha. Yeah, it's ugh. I so don't want to be on the wrong side of history on this one. I really don't. And I have friends and colleagues who are just torn up on all sides of this. You know, my Muslim colleagues, my Jewish colleagues, everyone's hurting. Everyone's hurting.
Yeah, and I think in that hurt again, we look at that grief spiral, and we look at who needs that that care and concern. Where are we in collecting our own peers in that is crucial, because while there may be sides in this conflict, the power is not equal, right? And I've heard folks say, well, Hamas has called for genocide of Israelis, and I'm like, yes, and there is no ability to do that, right? So you have a group, you've got Israel who is attacking, and they have an ability to do that. And so a threat of genocide becomes an action of genocide when you actually have the power to enact genocide. So
and we can say Hamas is wrong and abhorrent for calling
Sure.
for them, and still recognize that they don't have the means to affect the abhorrent things that they're calling for.
Right.
I think, again, multiple things can be true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is one of the things, we've been talking about, is how do we at the CLF help activate the folks who have the ability to have impact in our, Jewish colleagues, and in order to have the conversations that can move from, activated concern over, the Holocaust is still a real and present memory in many people's memory, DNA, all of that. And I honor that. I too come from a people who experienced a Holocaust and a genocide, which did effectively wipe out, the Tino Indians of my native land. And it can't be the only thing, right? I can't be so activated over that I'm not willing to be in conversation and be in action around a current genocide that's being perpetrated in my name. And I think that's the conversation, the spaces that we'd like to try and create and foster. And certainly, the vigils that CLF was co-sponsoring with Drum in December, we're looking at, how we can, if those spaces continue to be needed, and how we can activate those without overburdening the folks that are really, very much at the center and are tired, very tired, and also need care. So if any of y'all have ideas, let us know.
Well, and I've seen too many conversations about this Like, I don't think we've had this conversation here. So I'm trying to like come up with a new thing to say here too. I've seen too many conversations about this devolve into a debate over who is actually indigenous to that area. And I don't think that's a worthwhile or useful debate to have, right? Especially as people are being slaughtered. Especially as people are being slaughtered. But even if we're trying to envision a future, and and this week Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, announced that he didn't believe in a two-state solution and he was going to occupy both the West Bank and Gaza, as part of Israel. So, like, he keeps saying what he's doing, and he keeps announcing what his intentions are, and the United States keeps failing to stop him from doing that. But I don't think it's a useful debate to have. And so I want to caution people not to get into the debate of who are indigenous to that land, because it's complicated, right? And it is possible for two peoples to both claim indigeneity to a land, and for their claims to both have validity. And in that case, like, reasonable people need to figure out a peaceful way of coexisting with one another. And this is not it. Right? Like, this is not it. This is genocide, right? So that's one of those people can wipe out the other one, or we can figure out a peaceful way to actually like coexist with one another. And right now we're at the one of those people is trying to wipe out the other one. Lena Gardner writes, gratitude for your voice, Christina Rivera, such important points around power differential and how we support each other and not forget this genocide is happening against the Palestinians or let it slide to the peripheries. So thank you, Lena. We're glad that you're watching and amplifying that voice in the world.
And blessings, like Lena's baby has totally given me joy, like for a couple of years now. Like, I am just living happily through reports about this little baby. I'm sorry, totally off the subject, but I can't see Lena's name come up without smiling about that baby. So
Yes.
It's true. The baby's adorable.
I know she's not a baby anymore, but she's always going to be our baby.
Right? Right? Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness.
That's what we do it for, right? We're doing it for the knowledge. Well, not only, but the knowledge that I'm going to be an ancestor at some point in time, and that my descendants are going to look for what I did and what I modeled and how I spoke for how they're supposed to engage with this world. And I don't want them to look back at this and be like, oh, she didn't have a goddamn thing to say about this genocide that's happening, or that was happening at that time. That is not okay. And so if y'all like can't even do it for today, like, what are your descendants going to think about you, and what instruction are you giving them with your current actions in a modern day genocide? When we look back and we think, oh, everybody was on the side of Dr. King. No, not everybody was on the side of Dr. King. Everybody was on the side of the North. No, not all of the Yankees were on the side of the North and freedom. Like, that was not, what.
And not all the people who were on that side because they believed enslaved people should be freed.
Exactly. So, like, what is it? What is your legacy going to be? What when people look back on this, what are they going to say? And it's not just about that, but I do think about that. as part of my responsibility to my ancestors and the fuck shit that they went through in order for me to be here and have this platform to say these things. So there's your ancestry, your ancestry moment for the VUU for today.
So just think, the survivors of Palestinian attempted genocide will call our great-grandchildren into account in years to come for what we do right now. If there's not another reason to do it for that. But there should be, people are being slaughtered right now.
And how many of us grew up with, boy, if I lived in the time of Hitler, I'd have, oh, would you? Well, what are you doing now? The rise of fascism globally, which is about totalitarianism. We look back and we think, how could my great-grandparents have said nothing? And sitting here where I am now, boy, it's complicated, and I really want to, it's hard to be brave, and it's hard to tell what's right. And Karen, our ancestors are proud of us calling out the fuck shit. Absolutely, Karen. Oh God, yeah.
Well, and it shouldn't take courage to say, "Don't bomb hospitals," right?
Or schools, right? Yeah.
It shouldn't take courage to say that publicly.
That should not be a radical thing.
Please don't bomb refugee camps, even if there might be someone bad hiding there.
Right?
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Don't bomb hospitals. Don't bomb children.
There are zero functioning hospitals in Gaza.
Right.
Because they've all been bombed.
Right. Black Lives Matter. None of this shit should be radical. No, and if any of it upsets you, you got some shit to work through.
Yeah, and we're happy to help you work through it. So don't feel like you're out there on your own.
Right.
We are happy to help you, only too happy to help you work through it. Really. Seriously. I mean, that's part of, you shouldn't be asking your friends and colleagues to help you work through it, right? You should be asking the folks who say, yes, I'm happy to help you work through it in their professional life. That's part of our responsibility as leaders in this faith. And we get compensated for that, right? So don't put uncompensated work on your Black and brown friends and colleagues unless they invite you to do so. But yeah, if you want a safe, little nugget of place in the world to be like, Chris, what the fuck? I don't know. Can you tell me? What's going? I should know more about this. Jesus Christ, hit me up. I will get on Zoom with you for 20 minutes and we can talk about this and I can send you some resources. Don't be out there being intimidated or thinking that this isn't something that you're capable of. You absolutely are. You absolutely are. And I'd be only too happy to do that with you. That's what CLF is here for. That's what your church is here for. That's what your congregation is here for. That's what your minister should be here for. That's what your religious educator, your music director, your administrator, maybe not your administrator, they work really, really hard. they may not need another thing, but they could probably get you to somebody.
Right, yeah. My administrator is also my religious educator. So
yeah.
You
all know I love me some ministry. So yeah.
I am doubly blessed, and I don't know if she is. I think she might be doubly cursed. I'm not sure, but
Well, we are wrapping up our time together today, folks. Uh-oh.
Like the thought that has percolated, sort of bubbled up or down or whatever through this whole conversation is, who is it okay to kill? Who do we think it's okay to kill, and why? Like that's the conversation we should be having, because that's what it boils down to. Who is it okay to kill, and why do you think they're okay to kill? Oh,
I have answers.
And
I have lots of answers to that because I remember distinctly a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, one of my best friends in LA, and she and I were having this conversation, and she was just like, "There's just never a reason," and I was like, "I'm sorry if somebody was coming after your 2-year-old daughter, and the only thing between your 2-year-old daughter and this person was me and ending their life. I'm doing it." And that then leads to the slippery slope of who gets to decide, who how do you take accountability for that life that you've taken? All of those things, which are much larger conversations that we can have in the next 2 minutes.
Well,
but yeah,
next 2 minutes, yes.
And I've given Lucretia a link to pop into the chat. It's a long link because it's a gift link to a New York Times op-ed that appeared this week from a Rabbi Sharon Bruce, who asks the question based on her reading of Jewish text and Jewish history. Who is it okay to leave out? Right? Who is it okay to exclude from humanity? Right? And so, like, we can find these things in Jewish religious history to ask this question too, which I think is important.
Jacaren writes, and what consequences are you willing to live with?
Exactly. But it's that accountability part of that decision. You have to be ready for that because it does not come without consequence or true accountability does not come without consequence.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've spoken out in ways that I didn't think were particularly radical, that wrecked a ministry or made it impossible for me to do ministry because I upset too many people. And that was a big, painful price to pay. And it has left me a bit gun shy. I stuck my head in there once. Ain't gonna do it again. Got smacked hard. Yeah. Jesus was executed, and so many others, right? Like I don't really have those aspirations, folks. I'd like to live to fight another day, and I'm just struggling with the world trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
All right, beloved. we are at the top of the hour. I don't know what's on the calendar for next week, but we're going to reach out to some guests. We definitely have some exciting guests coming up in February, March. And we are so glad that you joined us. If you have suggestions, again, clf@clfuu.org. Give us suggestions of shows you'd like to see.
February 8th, I have to plug this. This is just so awesome. My Facebook buddy, Reverend Michael O'Sullivan, who is the minister. I know it's O'Sullivan, who is the minister at the Unitarian Church of Cork, Ireland, will be joining us.
Nice.
Love it.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds good.
And that came out of the conversation around, South Africa and Ireland bringing these charges to The Hague. So it'll be interesting, especially after the decision, a decision comes out this week. It'll be interesting after a week or two to see how that's working out in Ireland and what his thoughts might be. So,
All right.
looking
Well,
forward
that's
to that.
great, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been
Yes.
episode 414 of the VUU.
Wow. And Lena, give that baby a hug.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The VUU.